Alrighty. So I posted the other day on Threads about how I was laid off. At this point, it's maybe 2 years ago. I was laid off, and then I took a whole year sabbatical. I was like, whatever, just gonna chill. And then when I came back, I started looking for jobs. It took me 3 months to find a job. Now, with that said, it takes an average 6 months to find a job, and um, when you start adding the remote, the this, the that, like it adds up in how long it can take. So a lot of people ask questions around like, what did I do during my sabbatical? How did I afford my sabbatical? There's so many questions. So this video is going to answer gaps in my resume. So I'll answer what I did in my sabbatical, if it matters to you. And then I'll also answer how, when it did come up in interviews, how I answer that. The long story short, no one really asked me about the breaks. Like, I feel like I'm the one that brought it up because I was so nervous about it. Because I was like, "You're not gonna ask me about my break?" And they're like, "Everyone has breaks in their resume, like, whatever," right? So, um, I think with the where it matters the most, I think is probably your screening call because they want to screen you. I think the one time that it kind of did come up organically was the screening call from one of the companies, and she was mainly asking to be like, "Well, okay, are you fully ready to come back into the workforce now?" And I think that's actually an advantage for you if someone wants to ask you that, because right now there are a lot of studies that show that, like Gallup polls, etc., that show that a lot of workers are actually disengaged from their work. So if you can say, yes, I am fully committed to this, I am here, I'm excited to join the team, I'm ready to work, I've had, my break, my relaxation, my whatever, you actually have an advantage. And if you ask literally any person hiring right now, they will tell you excitement is one of the core things they're looking for. So your gap might actually be a great blessing because of the rest. I digress. But let me get back to my scripts. I don't keep digressing. So, as I mentioned, I shared this. I shared my 12-month gap. Um, and I think the reason why people keep asking me about my gap and how I talked about my gap is because I think like a lot of people believe that the reason why they're not getting a job is because of the gap in their resume. Now, I don't think that's totally false. I do think it matters how you're presenting the gap on your resume. Like I did write my gap on my resume. I wrote it on my LinkedIn. I did not hide my gap, but I also framed it in a sense of like in this time, this is what I did. I wasn't just kind of like I had a gap, period. I didn't just say gap and like leave it alone. I gave you some details, which I'll talk about in this video as well. So um some questions that came up were like, how do I explain the break without sounding lazy, lost, or unhireable? Some people felt a stigma, especially as they were stay-at-home moms, right? And they are re-entering the workplace. So I'm going to dismantle some of that fear here, but I want to really ground this that this is mainly coming from my experience and some experience with my clients, but I'm mainly speaking from what I went through and my perspective. And my background is I used to work in talent acquisition. I've had this pivot, I had the sabbatical. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, right? So, my belief is that career break isn't necessarily a setback, it's more of a foundation for your comeback because it really allows you in that time frame to really think deeply about what you want to do next and you're not just blindly following the next thing that you need to do, which actually then makes you way more compatible or just a better hire because you're coming in here with intentionality rather than just being like I'm just here to pay my bills, which is also probably why you're getting the job now, but like hopefully there's a little bit more intentionality behind it, right? I think the gap is where you can start accumulating um, the one thing that a job can't teach you, right? Which is clarity. The best career move you can make is to pause long enough to remember what you actually want next, right? So this video is not about hiding your gap. As I mentioned, I put my gap in my resume, I put my gap on my LinkedIn. It's about learning how to showcase that gap as one of your most valuable assets. So how do you do this? Right? So we move from being defensive to being offensive, right? You need to control the narrative before it controls you. And that's what I'm calling my strategic narrative framework. And that's what I use a lot with my clients. And that's kind of obviously what I used myself, right? So it's not about what you say in the interview first, it's about how you believe what you did impacted your next move, right? It's about believing before you even get to the interview, even before you write your resume. that your time off was fruitful, right? And the process to reframe your time off, not as a time of like, oh my God, I was unemployed, I was laid off, I hate the economy, and more as a period of intentional realignment and growth starts here. So let's break down the exact formula for building that narrative, and mapping it directly to the skills and mindset your future employer is desperately looking for. Okay. So this is a 5-step playbook that you need to follow. So step number one, this is what I will call your growth inventory. And this is very similar to if you've watched any of my other videos, I talk a lot about brag books, and it's the same concept, or receipts. It's the same concept as when you're working, you always want to keep receipts of what you're doing because we forget. And there's something called recency bias, which means you or your boss, actually more your boss, is remembering the most recent thing that you did, good or bad. But if you have a receipts or a brag book, you're able to bring up the things that happened 2, 3 months ago, right? And cumulatively say, this is what I did this quarter, this is what I did this year, this is why I deserve the promotion, etc. You want to do the same thing in your job search because depending on how you took the gap, for me, I knew I wanted to stop working, but the reason why I ended up not working was because of a layoff, right? So for the first few weeks, weeks, months, like I was like, oh my gosh, am I not good enough? Like I did spiral a little bit. So in those first weeks, like I just literally like, well, when I traveled, I laid off, I got laid out on a Tuesday and I was on a flight on a Friday and I was like, I'm out of here. Right. So I traveled for a bit and did that. And then when I came back, I was watching TV, like I chilled for a minute. Right. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you like right away, I hit the ground running. That's not what happened. Right. But then I did start doing stuff, which I'll explain later. But I say this to say is that depending on how your trajectory goes, either you will be the person who chills for a bit, you be the person who maybe does a little stuff, some side projects. Maybe you might just hit the ground running. I don't know, and it actually does not matter. But what does matter is that you document whatever it is that you're doing. So that way, when you start actually seriously applying, you can look back and say, "Oh, I did do these things along the way," right? Rather than um, forgetting what you did, right? So when you do this first step, which is a growth inventory, you will take an inventory of everything you actually did, right? So for me, I rested, I cooked, I gardened, I traveled. I traveled to Ghana, Costa Rica, Tanzania, Kenya, Canada. Like I was just out here. I was just, in the U.S. I was also traveling, right? I was just doing whatever, right? And then also because I was laid off, I had I think it's called an outplacement company. So an outplacement company helps you write your resume, and they also give you like a free trial to something like Coursera or some platform that can help you upskill. So I was like, oh, everyone says being a program manager is cool. Let me take the PMP. So for the PMP, you have to take 35 hours worth of coursework, and it was free, so I took it. As I was taking this, I was like, I actually don't really like this. I ended up not taking the PMP certification. I took the hours, but not the certification. And this only matters because I feel like people always get so caught up in certifications. I was like, I don't think I ever want to have a job title that says program manager. And now that I know the language, when I was interviewing, I was able to talk the language of program manager insofar of like, oh, when I cross collaborate with program managers, I know I would need to give them this in order to be successful. But I did not need the PMP for that. So why waste my time taking an exam that I know I did not want or need? Right. So, but I took some courses through that. I took some AI courses because I was actually interested in AI. So that those courses I actually took, and I took the certifications and all that good stuff. Um, what else did I do? I read a lot. And even now, if I'm ever talking in casual conversation, like I have like books for days, right? Like I will always bring up some random book I read and what I learned from it. Same thing from any course I take, whether I take the certification or not. I also help my mom manage her business. So again, like I said, I never took the PMP exam, so I can't officially call myself a project management or a project program manager. But in conversation, someone asked me, oh, so what did you say when people ask you about your gap? I'd be like, oh, I helped my mom with her business, which taught me XYZ. I had to manage the different workers. I had to manage different time zones. Like that is more valuable than the PMP, in my opinion, right? When you're having a conversation. So stuff like that. I did freelance projects. I was teaching people AI. Um, Oh, I also spend a lot of time with my family. Like, I have a lot of nieces and nephews under 6 years old, so I became auntie. I became rich auntie. And I was babysitting, right? Which translates to, like, empathy and crisis management, right? And quite frankly, I was also very honest. Like, I worked at a startup. I was working 12-hour days, 13-hour days. So also I slept a lot. And I was very honest with all of this. But anyway, this is my inventory, right? The resting, the cooking, the sleeping, the courses, the family time, that is my inventory. Okay. Now that we've done step one of the inventory, now we go to step two. Now, step two is acknowledge and own it, right? So when someone asks you about your gap, right, you give a reason in a single confident sentence. You don't need any long justification, like no apologies. Don't be defensive. Just give a reason or give an example. So, for example, for me, I'll say something like, after 20% or 30% of my company was laid off or the roles were eliminated, I decided to take an intentional year-long sabbatical to recharge and be deliberate about my next career move, right? Um, that's it. Like, they might ask you a follow-up question, they might not, but so many people have been laid off these days that, like, it's not a novel thing. It's not an indictment on who you are. So, like, some people will hear that and they'll be like, fine. Some people ask me more questions. Don't take that personally, right? If, for example, you're a stay-at-home mom, you can say, I took a planned 3-year, 2-year, whatever career break to focus on raising my young children. And we can have a whole different discussion on this, but I also think like you should frame, if you're a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, you should frame stay-at-home caregiver, you should frame your stay at home time as an agency, as like a project, as a freelance, as something tangible, right? Because it is tangible. You've put in hours, you've project managed, you've done whatever. So whatever job you're trying to go to, I would create something on my resume like XYZ company, and then I would list the things that I did, the impact that I had. Like you're working. Don't undercut that. Like put that on your resume. But that's me and my clients, and it works for us. But so that's step one. We did an inventory. Step two, we simply stated, we acknowledged and owned our gaps. Step three is growth. We're highlighting our self-development. So if they do ask you more questions, or even if you offer, this is where you shift the focus, right? The interviewer doesn't just want to know about what you did, they want to know what you learned. How did you grow during that time, right? So an example could be, um, this is a challenging time, but this was challenging but rewarding time for me. It helped me develop a deeper sense of patience and resourcefulness. For example, planning multi-country travel on a budget really sharpened my skills in project management and cross-functional or cross-cultural communication, and time management. And notice how we translated travel into business skills. We said, yes, me traveling, yes, that was fun. And maybe we can talk if they went to the same city, if they also went to Kenya or the safari, we can talk about that and we can bond, which is important. But we can also just talk about how me going to safari meant I had to pack, I had to think ahead, I had to think about risk, I had to plan my group of friends, right? You can show the tangible skills that you learned from all this stuff, even if it was just fun and games in that moment. Once you take the inventory for step one, you can then map out and translate to how it works for the business of where you're trying to go, right? If you're a stay-at-home guardian, you can also say something like, the period taught me an immense amounts about patience, crisis management, and empathy, while also honing my skills in budgeting and long-term scheduling, event planning, whatever. The key here, and this is what I tell my clients all the time, the key here is you have to decide where you want to go. So if you want to be a project manager, then everything you say, the travel, the stay-at-homeness, all of it goes to project management. If you want to be a customer success manager, then everything you do is all about relationship building. When I was traveling, I was meeting all these people and I was able to build relationships, which helped me navigate the scary thing when I was stuck at the airport. But because I had built a relationship with the flight attendant before, I was able to figure it out, right? Every single thing in your life is a setup. Allow it to be a setup for you. Okay, number four, right? We did one, which is gather information. Two, you're stating and acknowledging it. Three, you're showing the growth. Number four is mention other relevant experiences, right? So, um, you've gone through maybe the fundamental stuff, and depending on how you framed it, if you do number 3 in the way that I kind of explained, it's more around you translating what you did into business stuff, but you also want to realize that at the end of the day, humans are hiring humans. So number 4 is more about kind of broadening the scope and also being a little bit more relatable if you can. And this is where researching matters. If you know this person likes to read, likes podcasts, likes whatever, then you want to bring this up here, right? So you can say whether you took courses, whether you volunteered, whether you read some industry books. Like, let's say like you're applying for a company that just pivoted and is now a native AI company. You can talk about the books that you read about AI, right? I think is Bola. I'm forgetting her full name, but her book is Unmasking AI. You can read Yuval just came out with a new book about humankind and AI. Like, you can mention stuff, and it doesn't mean they've actually read it, but it shows that you're in tune and you're thinking about it, right? So you can say during that time, I stayed curious. I completed several LinkedIn learning courses and even did a course. Like, for example, for me, I did a PMP course. While I chose not to certify in this, I gained, like, very insightful, I gained valuable insight, which led me know that I definitely wanted to go down this path of um, crisis management or change management or training versus that. Right. But I'm so, excited to work with my colleagues in the program management space, like whatever you need to say, but like just show connections. And then last but not least, step number 5, the answer. So now we combine the steps into one smooth, compelling answer, and we focus on the positive outcome, right? So this can be two things can happen. Either you're having a conversation through this whole thing, or you kind of just let it all out one time and done, right? So if you let it all out one time and done, you say something like, after my role was eliminated, I decided to take a planned sabbatical. It was challenging but rewarding time that helped me develop a deeper sense of patience and resourcefulness. I also stayed engaged with my professional development, completing a PMP course, which really sharpened my project management mindset. That period gave me incredible clarity, and now I'm ready and excited to bring that focus to a full time role like this one. Right. So you can go two ways about it. Either you can allow the conversation to be a conversation and then kind of go through the all the steps, or you can just kind of give the statement I just gave, but make it a little bit more fluid. I obviously prefer the first one because it's more fluid and it brings you more conversational. But if you just want to say the whole statement, but in your own way, you can do that too. So let's recap this, right? So a career break is a foundation for your comeback. It's not a death sentence. Having a gap in your resume is fine. You need to, however, learn how to use that strategically and revamp it. So if you think that this is a failure, you're going to project that it's a failure. If you think this is a learning moment, you're going to project that as well, right? So that is really important. And you have to own the story with a strategic narrative, okay? Like, figure out where you want to land and then own the story. Excuse me, and then use the 5-part formula to turn your experience into proof of your strength, right? The time off isn't necessarily just a setback. If you allow it to be an aligned thing, if you make it more intentional and say like, hey, this is how it's going to map out to my future, you'll be in a better spot, right? You're not desperate, you're discerning. You took the time to think through what you wanted, right? So I want to hear your story right now. So in the comments, please share one valuable thing, a skill or a piece of clarity that you've gained during your career break. Or if you are someone who stay at home to support your children, like what have you gained from that? Where can you turn this into more strategic alignment, right? In how you're talking about, like, let's normalize this together, right? Um, so yeah, I want to hear from you. If you are working on your own career pivot, your own transition, and you need help crafting your unique story, that's what I do. I love doing it, right? So you can find my career pivot playbook in the description below, or you can find information for one-on-one coaching, and we can work together to make sure that you're able to frame your story in a strategic way that really makes sure that you land an aligned job. So, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more strategies to build a career that works for you. And I'll see you in the next video, but also in the comments. So, drop a comment. Let's chat.